Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Agasicles famous from the Rounding Off Infinity Gaming channel on YouTube, the E2KG Network podcasting channel on YouTube, aka Game Logic on Twitch, here with episode number 138 of the Enough to Keep Going weekly gaming podcast, the People's Weekly Gaming Podcast. And I'm here with my two ever-present and faithful co-hosts, Mr. DBqHams. How you doing, DBQ?
I think that was the fastest announcement of the introduction that I've ever heard. That was an excellent job. Thank you very much, Agasicles.
And Mr. Osiris Prime. How you doing, Prime?
I am well. Thank you for having me back finally.
Good. Well, I mean, it's up to you whenever you want to be on.
That's true.
It's not like
I just haven't been on the schedule, so I was like, maybe they don't want me on. I don't know.
It's not like we've been barring you from participating on the show. So tonight,
Well, I have actually. Last time it was, I said we couldn't be on together unless we share an island in Animal Crossing, and it just never happened. So
speaking of which, we have a barnstorming bushel crop, butt ton of games to talk about tonight. It's weird. I don't know what's going on with us. I don't know whether we just all finally jumped on board like the new game bandwagon for 2020, even though technically that's kind of supposed to be our jobs is to play those new games. So we have something to talk about on the podcast, and it can help keep you guys, the viewers and listeners, informed. At any rate, we got a bunch of new stuff that we've all been playing. And admittedly, some of that is because the year has been slow, not solely due to the health crisis. It was looking like a slow year as we came into it anyway. If you're not familiar with the show, we do two different formats. We do a industry news deep dive every other week where we talk about not just news stories in the gaming biz, because kind of every gaming podcast does that. We spend the 2 weeks in between trying to suss out the overall trend and a direction that the whole industry is moving in, giving the news stories that come out over those 2 weeks. However, on these weeks, these alternating weeks, we have the GX show, the Gamers Experience show, and here what we talk about is all the games that we've been playing the other 2 weeks. First and foremost in that discussion is our PickZ PlayZ report out. So this is a thing that we do where collectively the four of us kind of kick around some ideas of like a gaming assignment. It's kind of like a gaming homework assignment. We issue that out, and then everybody on the show is supposed to the best of their ability, with an understanding that, again, we're not paid employees of anywhere, so we deviate, we change the conditions of the test sometimes as it may suit our needs, and sometimes we just can't get to the assignment. The assignment these past 2 weeks has been oriented around acknowledging that, the month of March saw the first really significant releases of this year, which is the final year of this console generation. So it's a year that we've predicted will be kind of slow, with a few really bright, big AAA releases throughout the year. Of course, now that's kind of in question about when exactly things like The Last of Us 2 are going to come out. Although, CD Projekt Red has been on record as late as today saying that Cyberpunk 2077 is on track. But at any rate, this was kind of the first really big banger month for new game releases. And so the assignment was for us each to hit one of those, at least one of the big three, which were Animal Crossing, Doom Eternal, Ori and the Will of the Wisps. And there were some other smatterings of things in there that, those were just the three that we picked out. Named in the assignment, there were certainly other games that came out that could be considered big. Or for anybody who wasn't plunking down for a new game this month, try and play a game from that same developer that warrants revisiting if you hadn't played one of the big three. And even if you had played one of the big three, maybe also go back and tag up with one of those other titles that the same developer had done, or even, members of a studio, or, there are lots of studios that are really made up of expat devs from another studio, but try and find something that was creatively formed from the same kind of DNA as the big new release. Now, as it is, the three of us, minus Swissguard, who is not on this week, did actually play titles that released this month. DBQ and Prime, I'm going to start with both of you, DBQ with you specifically, and let you talk about your experience playing Animal Crossing on the Nintendo Switch, obviously, and kick that around with Prime a little bit.
Sure, that sounds good. I did also get a chance to play Will of the Wisp. Thank you, Game Pass. But we talked about that on a previous, I think the last GX show a little bit. So, Animal Crossing. Prime, I have been playing on my son's island, so I have not started up my. Well, that's not true. I started the game on my son's island, and then as part of the assignment, I decided to see if I could have two simultaneous digital copies going at the same time from two different switches to then see if I could start my own island while having the other profile logged in as well. And actually, I could. So to answer our question, so I've done a little bit of both, and I gotta say, certainly there's been a lot of talk around what the second player, the shared player experience has been within podcasts and videos and game press, and I actually don't mind it. And I think I don't mind it because it allows me to just do the things I want to do within Animal Crossing, which is collect stuff, sell stuff, pick weeds, chop down things, get into that loop. I don't really actually want to do the resource grind of making the bridge and then making sure that, you know, I've got enough stuff. Oh, I don't care about eggs. But,
I assume
so,
you're picking those weeds purely for medicinal purposes.
oh, yes, especially in these times. Yes, very much so. But I mean, the benefit, and this is where the assignment comes in, is in previous games, like the last one, New Leaf on the 3DS, that you would pick weeds purely for score of your island, your town, your village, rather than you can actually sell. This is medicinal weeds have been legalized within the island of Animal Crossing, so you can pick them and then sell them. And so that is a new addition, not a huge economic piece, but early in the game, it's one of the few things you can do, and it definitely gets you moving there. It's been nice to be the second player because, like, I didn't have to craft the ladder. My son did, so then he gave me a copy of it, and then we had access to the second half of our island. Um, there's a lot of kind of small quality of life things here that are beneficial, like the selling of weeds, like the dodo hopping island planes where you can move to islands that you can basically strip mine and then move back out. Um, you're just visiting. Even simple things like item stacking. The fact that I can stack up cherries or oranges or coconuts, where when I went back and played the 3DS version, how much inventory management. We'll come back to the inventory management game later in the podcast, but that is it's been a little more simplified here because you can stack things. So,
Yeah.
Prime, you've got your
Most
own
things.
island though.
I
Most
do.
things, that is true.
Yeah,
Yeah,
most things.
I can't stack multiple shovels, so when one breaks, I have another one. So, which is too bad. But how have you been playing? I've seen you online a couple different times. I haven't had a chance to visit your island yet. So, how's your experience been?
Yeah, I've been playing pretty much solo. I think my wife might start playing, but she'll probably play on my son's 3DS more than likely. That way we can kind of, I can visit her island. And like you said, I could just, dump a bunch of stuff for her, like shovels and the pole vault thing and, the ladders and all that. Um, so even though I'm on my solitary island for now, I am playing a lot on the multiplayer side, though, as far as the online, where you can visit islands. Once again, Nintendo, you got to do a dodo code for a lot of this, which is just like their little code that, you give to somebody. But you can, if you have friends on this actual Switch, you can just visit their island if they open it up. So that's nice. That's kind of nice. But the big
So
thing with
how has that experience been? Because that's something I haven't done. So I'm curious, what do you have the ability to do there? Can you buy and sell stuff? Can you grab their fruit?
Yeah, so you can do just basically that. You can just buy stuff. If there's stuff on the ground, you can. I think you can shake like the trees and stuff like that. You can't chop anything down or modify the island in any way unless you're best friends with them, which is something you have to go into the settings and say, hey, I want this person as a best friend, and then they can do a lot more on your island or on somebody else's island if that's what you want to do. Um, I'm not even sure if you can dig. I didn't try that just because I didn't want to, I didn't want to piss anybody off. So I'm trying to play nice because as I found out this past week, turnips is the big thing, the big selling point in this game. And I think it's always been like that. But before, I really didn't have the time or just the patience, I think, to kind of do that. But now, and I think I mentioned this before, I'm on this Discord channel, another Discord server, which, we play a bunch of different games. But Animal Crossing has been a big one as of late. And, when so you buy the turnips on Sundays, and then throughout that whole week up until the Saturday, you can sell them, but it's kind of like stock market where you're trying to buy low and sell high as you can. So people are always on there, messaging, hey, my turnips are this or that. So I found out, but as I found out this week, I finally got that big payout, and I've got like I have 1 million bells right now, but that was a little bit kind of combined with what I already had. So, but still, I got up to 1 million, which I've never even come close to that in any of the other games that I've played, the Animal Crossing games.
So how many levels is your house then at that stage? Because at 1 million, you got a couple mortgage payments you could pay off at that point.
Yeah, so I just paid off my normal house, and I just bought one edition, which I paid off right away. And then I went directly into my next edition, which I won't get until tomorrow because I just did it just today. So I'll be able to pay that one off like right away. So I'll have those two, and then I'll start the third, or maybe it's like the expansion, I think, at that point. And so for right now, I got my houses going, I got my rooms going. Now I kind of have to switch over and start like buying stuff so I can, like decorate and, do all that kind of jazz and stuff. But it's kind of nice that, I don't have to, wait months and months to get all these rooms, added and all this other stuff. But besides the house, like the bridges and the ramps and all that other stuff you can do, within the island, that costs a lot of money. When I was looking at the inclines, what they call it inclines in here, but basically it's just like a ramp for the higher kind of cliffs and stuff that you have now. Like the lowest one was like 98,000. So I was like, holy cow. So, and obviously doing the turnip thing, it definitely helps a lot because you do get a lot of money from that. So it's actually kind of nice that I'm able to do that now, and I can build us all the other stuff. I haven't gotten to the terraforming stuff yet, so I'm not sure how that, excuse me, if that costs money just when you're trying to do that, or if you could just do it, willy nilly. So I'll have to find out. I don't know if you or your sons have gotten to the terraforming thing yet.
No, we're not at the terraforming part yet. Actually, just last week we got the resident services building in. So
okay.
So I guess it's been a week now since we've had that because we've been kind of just chipping away at it. Yeah, it's been nice as kind of like a low key play a little bit, check in. I've actually done some of the simultaneous multiplayer with my son, where you're both kind of running around the same island. It's pretty limited because we tried to go to one of the Dodo Islands, but you couldn't do that in multiplayer. You couldn't, So,
quick question, real quick. So, when you say you're doing the multiplayer, is that on one Switch, or you each have your own Switch and you're playing?
One Switch. So it's
So so couch co-op basically.
Couch co-op, exactly.
So does it do a split screen, or you have to stay like on the same screen?
It keeps you pretty much on the same screen.
Okay.
You're pretty limited as that second player. I mean, in some ways, it's great in the early game to kind of clean up your island. If you were trying to do, it works really well for mass labor, right? Like if you need a lot of picking or chopping or weed cleaning up or fishing, that is
clearing the land.
You're both doing the same thing, because as a second player, it just goes to the recycle bin, the storage bin. You can't even pull up your inventory. You can just kind of cycle through your tools. So it's really limited. It works probably well for like a more experienced player and a less experienced player to kind of play together, or to introduce somebody to the game in terms of some of the mechanics. But in terms of an actual multiplayer kind of shared experience, other than kind of making your own fun of kind of chasing each other around with nets and seeing who gets stung by the bees, there's not a lot of there in a multiplayer couch co-op type of way.
And why else have kids if not to have them be your forced labor when they come of age?
That's right.
That's right. That is. We did find a tarantula. I let it sting my son so that I could trap it. So again, right? It was
excellent. One is bait. That's even better.
Perfect father.
So help me out. So is this is this game? You guys know I'm not an Animal Crossing player, so the first in
Really?
my series, the first in my series of questions is this a suitable substitute for something like The Sims? For somebody who owns a Nintendo Switch and obviously doesn't have access to that kind of a title.
That's a good question.
I mean, it's probably
Because
as
that's what it
close of a
sounds like
substitute
when
as
you guys are
yeah,
talking
it's
about
probably
it.
as close of a substitute as you're gonna get, right? You don't get
Yeah.
the kind of complexity and scripting that goes on within kind of the routines of the Sims. Um, you can do some designs of shirts and wallpapers, and there's a whole cottage industry of QR codes on online where you can scan in images and do a number of different things. So there is. I think that's where the game really comes in is in the you know decorating, in the collection aspect, the kind of designing your rooms, your home, your landscaping. All of those things is probably where people get the most longevity out of the game, and that's probably why I kind of trail off with it or just kind of run around and pick weeds. I do the dad job of picking up poop in the backyard. um,
And doing it in the
that
game too.
I know, right? But because I don't really want to chase the perfect wallpaper. So I think that it's one of those where you kind of have to, you either have to make your own fun out of it, or you have to be in that kind of, that's the thing you're coming to it for.
Yeah, and
At
I
least
think
that's
I
my
would.
impression.
Yeah, I would drop off kind of like that too, just because not because I didn't want to find like the perfect wallpaper or stuff like that. It's just I didn't have the time because I didn't have the money to grind like that. And here now, like I said, with the turnips, I mean, you get a ton of money, so now I can actually go out and just start buying all kinds of stuff and going that route. But for me, there are some downsides. I don't know if you've seen these downsides. Crafting,
Oh,
fine.
okay. Yes. Continue, please.
Crafting's
There's
fine.
plenty of downsides, but
Oh yeah. So I don't mind the crafting all that much. But when you have to craft your tools now, so shovel and slingshot and the ladders and stuff. Although I don't know if the ladders and the pole vault actually break because I haven't seen that happen yet. But some of the basic tools like the shovel and stuff like that, they do break eventually, kind of like Zelda, and it's really annoying. It's not for me. It's not game breaking or anything like that. It's just kind of really a big annoyance. Like okay, like I'm digging away at something or trying to like fix a certain section of my island, and all of a sudden, boom, it breaks. It's like, oh, come on, man. And then you got to go in. I got to drop down, the crafting bench or whatever I happen to have, and go through all this and make sure I have all the materials and all that. So I think this is more of annoyance just because, excuse me, I never had to do that in the previous games. So I don't know what your take on the crafting is. Kind
no,
of as
I
a
think
whole.
that's why I gave it the knock of, not being able to stack my shovels, right? Like, in some ways, I can see the crafting as it gives another layer of progression that you have different types of shovels or axes. In some ways, the cheap axe is nicer because you can get another hit out of a tree versus chopping down a tree.
Right.
Um, if you could, like in Zelda, when you craft something or when a weapon breaks, I still have an inventory full of other suitable weapons, or I have to make the decision about what's my next weapon to choose. Here, since I can only carry one of it at a time, I have to stop whatever I'm doing, either carry my workbench with you, like you're saying, or in our island, we just have it located kind of in a central spot, and going back to that shared workbench and then coming back. I mean, it's not like you have a huge island where this is a time sink,
Right.
but it's a unnecessary kind of additional layer of interaction.
Yeah, because there's nothing you can do. There's nothing you can learn to improve upon that. It's just a constant, nagging, persistent pain that you can't do anything about. That serves nothing other than to inconvenience you.
Yeah,
Right?
I mean, there's levels because you get like the flimsy shovel, and then you got the stone shovel or whatever. Like the next tier up. Gold, I think, is the highest one as far as I've seen. Not that I've crafted, but I've seen talked about online. But even that gold one will break eventually. Obviously, it's probably gonna last a lot longer, but still, it's an inconvenience. It's not like I said, it's not a deal breaker for me, but I think it's because, like I said, in past games, I didn't have to do that before. So, like, if this is the first game for you, it's probably fine. Like, you're probably used to it because if you played Minecraft and um, like I said, Zelda and stuff like that, you're probably used to that if you grew up with that. But just because of that kind of knowledge from past games. It's like, oh, come on, guys, come on.
So help me out a little bit. My recollection is that previous iterations of Animal Crossing, um, particularly the ones, because did this franchise start out on the on the
GameCube, right?
handheld?
GameCube.
Started
Nope,
out-
GameCube.
started off on the GameCube. Actually, the 64 DD, I suppose technically, and then came over to America on the GameCube.
Okay, so it seems like what I'm remembering was something that had to do with a handheld version. Are there issues of persistence where the world is still continuing on when you are not playing, and then there's some type of penalty impact if you don't like get back and play with some degree of frequency?
Yeah, so yeah, it does. It's basically real world time for your time zone, whatever you set at the beginning of the game. So yeah, stuff happens. Like I said, with the turnip thing, you only have like a set amount of time on Sundays when the person or the animal, whatever, comes and selling the stuff. And if you're busy doing something in real life, then you got to wait until next week. That's just the way it is. So, and the same thing throughout the week. If if somebody has, I think like 1,000. Maybe I think it's 800 or 1,000 bells is like the highest that you can actually sell for. If you miss that opportunity, well, I mean, it's gone. So you just gotta hopefully somebody else has something as high, if not the highest, kind of thing. But yeah, it is a real world time. So
So it sounds like there are what I would interpret as negative quality of life impacts associated with this game, along the lines of like, and this is a very micro example, but like for me, like my problem with Destiny 2 and the fact that you can't pause when you're playing single player, right? So you have to carefully maneuver your character to park them somewhere if you need to go use a bathroom or get a snack or attend to a kid or whatever. And that to me is like, so given those things that are associated with Animal Crossing, like what? So this is a weird year for the Switch, right? It's too, as much as Nintendo wants to say they're not competing with Microsoft and PlayStation, and I understand that. However, the two devices on the market that are most akin to the Switch are about to launch their successors. What like how and why does Animal Crossing figure into the importance of a Nintendo platform in its life cycle? And it was this an important release for the Switch right now?
go ahead, DB. You can go.
Oh yeah, I first I'll say that this is in terms of the quality of life pieces. Yes, there are some quality of life concerns, but looking at the series over the course of its generations, GameCube, DS, Wii, and 3DS, this is the most user-friendly, most kind of easiest to onboard, kind of widest variety. This is the best iteration of it to some degree, except for the crafting, right? If the crafting is a make or break thing for you, it's not. So it's kind of a mixed bag of quality of life pieces. In terms of whether this is a critical release for the Switch, this game couldn't have come at a better time around the world, right? I mean, in Japan, it sells 2 million units within the less than the first month. That's huge on Switch sales and Switch numbers, and that's physical.
Yeah, I think it was
think
like a million the first week or something like that, or something like
yeah,
that. Close to that?
really significant. If this would have been released under a normal situation or a crowded release schedule, like if this came out in March when everything else was supposed to come out in March, yeah, right. It could have easily gotten overshadowed as just it's that kind of slow, quirky Nintendo title, and it's gonna, it isn't gonna hit the same kind of market penetration that it did. In some ways, it was a product of happenstance, and because of it, it ends up being a more impactful title for Nintendo than I think it would have been in any other circumstance.
Yeah, I mean, this is the definition of right place, right time. So unfortunately, for the state of the world right now, but yeah, I mean, without how everything is right now, it probably wouldn't have done the numbers it is doing. It probably would have been pretty popular, and it would have probably sold pretty well, probably better than most of the other iterations. But it's not going to be like Mario Odyssey numbers or stuff like that. If it was just like a normal time in the world right now. But I think there's a place for this type of game out there. Obviously, people. I don't want to compare it to Minecraft, but kind of Minecraft-ish, and not just because of crafting, but just kind of a chill kind of game you can do. If you want to sit there and set your island up with flowers or the trees, the different fruit and stuff you can do. You can do that if you want to just design the whole time. I've seen people like whole threads and forums and other websites where they have the QR codes like DB said, where you can download the fashions and if you want to use it for clothes or walls or whatever. But yeah, I mean, and I have other problems with it, but we won't get to that right now. But yeah, I think it was, like I said, it was just like kind of the definition of the right place, right time that it came out.
Yeah, and I hear as you guys have talked about it, I hear bits and pieces of other types of other games and elements of their design, kind of making up part of the infrastructure of Animal Crossing. Like I said, I hear bits and pieces of The Sims. I hear bits and pieces of what to me sounds like the chore. And I don't mean this in a negative manner, but I can't think of a different way to say it right now off the top of my head. But the chore type stuff in Red Dead Redemption 2. I hear bits and pieces of the crafting elements of Horizon Zero Dawn, and so it sounds like one of the appeal is that you have this widely varied set of activities that you can participate in. You have some that you can participate in, some that you can skirt and avoid. Then you have some things that you can't get around that are just kind of always in your face. But it sounds like there's a wide variety of things for different gamers. I don't know. I don't know that I agree with you guys on how successful it would or wouldn't have been, regardless of the health crisis. I think if you just scale everyone's sale numbers and assume that they're all on some type of curve, I still feel like Animal Crossing would have sold very well this month, just given the fact that the other things that were in the mix were, Ori and the Will of the Wisp, which I think, given its difficulty curve and some of the annoying things that I think it puts in your face, might only appeal to the pretty hardcore niche of platformer gamers. And Doom Eternal, which we're about to talk about, definitely only appeals to a certain crowd, in my opinion. So I feel like for the Nintendo Switch crowd who doesn't get that many like super big like platform critical releases at a time, I still feel like Animal Crossing would have performed pretty well, given all the Nintendo Switch units out there. I think if the world survives all this, and the next format for our podcast is at me on the roof of the CDC in Atlanta podcasting to you guys over the Rick Grimes walkie-talkie, then I think that we're eventually going to come back around, months from now, maybe as early as the end of the year, if this curve and like thing works itself out, and have a discussion about the things that sold this month. Were they ridiculously out of whack? Because there was, I mean, we have data now that shows there was an increase in game sales during this time period. It's going to be interesting to see how that compares against data, throughout the remainder of the year, particularly if we come out of this loop that we're in right now. Anything else that you guys want to talk about with regards to Animal Crossing before we move on?
No, I'll let you go. Otherwise, we'll be here all show.
Yeah, you made a good transition, so let's keep it going.
Okay, and we do have a viewer, listener in the chat on the live stream who, Super Dopey, a good friend of mine, who mentions, I definitely feel like quality of life stuff is self-made by the players in a lot of titles. And I think what he means by that is it's a weird mix, right? Because the developers put things, when we tag it as a quality of life issue, we interpret it as it's something that's been put in front of us and interferes in our ability to extract fun and entertainment out of that title. But what is definitely true is that varies wildly across from gamer to gamer, right? Like I talked about like putting the wheel on the wagon in Red Dead Redemption 2, and I felt like that was just a completely unnecessary waste of my time, right? Because it didn't lend to the gamification of it. But other people don't have problems with it, so an interesting comment from Super Dopey. Doom Eternal. I've rolled credits on it. So the game is done. it shall forever go into my memory. I don't have any intentions right now of pulling it back out to replay any part of it. I'm not planning on dipping into the multiplayer at all. It is done. It is in the annals. It's not even. I mean, it's not even in the backlog, right? It's been completely that ticket in Jira has been completely closed out, right? So, um, I've completed it now with enough time before this show to then go back and watch some of my footage of me playing the game. I think I wound up live streaming or recording my entire playthrough of the game. So it's all been captured. Part of what I realize is that this is one of the things that we talk about all the time is kind of catching ourselves in terms of how we evoke certain messages on the show, and even as we converse amongst ourselves in the Discord channel, versus what actual data would show if we had it all laid out. And so one of the things is I've commented ad nauseum about how annoying that game is. When I go back and I look at the footage, I've had to kind of true that up and say, well, it looks like I was annoyed about 30% of the time, right? But 70% of the time, there were minor annoyances and stuff that I might just chalk up to being, well, that's just playing games. And the rest of it, I was fine with. But man, I tell you, the times when I was annoyed, I was like controller smashing, monitor breaking, annoyed, at certain peaks. So, we've talked a little bit about most of it. Most of my problem with the game is that I think, and I've learned a lot about myself too in my interpretation of games as I came through playing this title. I think one of my big things about game design is that the things that are unacceptable to me, and there are elements of our discussion of Red Dead Redemption 2 here. The thing that is unacceptable to me is you can't break a covenant that you made with me in your presentation of your game design. So what I mean by that is you can't come at me and present to me a set of systems and train me on how to operate within those systems, and then at a later point in the game arbitrarily change them with no warning and no explanation and for no good, simply to make the game more difficult. And then arbitrarily return the system state back to what it was when you presented the system to me in the first place. So instances of that to me are things like there's a ton of Sturm and Drang about getting a hold of the BFG and then getting a hold of the Crucible Sword. Before you get those two weapons, you're presented this enemy, which I think probably all of you guys have heard of. The internet is all abuzz about it. There's these enemies called the Marauder. There's all this Sturm and Drang about you getting these super weapons, which the lore and the story and everything presented to you leads you to believe that once you get those, you're golden, right? That they should defeat everything. They don't work against the Marauder. Like, they literally cannot be used to take out the Marauder. So an enemy that is presented to you at about, maybe I'd say the 50% point in the game, it is nothing near like the end bosses that you're supposed to meet. The two super weapons that you get don't do anything against that enemy. The other point that I really had a hard time with is the game makes the demons resources, right? So the way to regain ammo when your ammo runs out is to chainsaw a demon. The way you regain health, there are health packs later in the game, but essentially your primary way of regaining health is to stagger a demon and then do a glory kill on them to regain health, which I think was the same way it was in the 2016 version. Excuse me. There are levels that you will get to, and this happened several times, and it happened several times over and over, where I had fought a very hard battle. I was down to like the last two demons on the screen, which are mini bosses, right? And they don't spawn any what I eventually came to call mini demons or toy demons. They don't spawn any demons that you can stagger for a glory kill or chainsaw. So like the remaining demons on the board will be unchainsawable demons. And so at that point, you run out of ammo, you have nothing left but the chainsaw, there's nothing left for you to chainsaw, so you can't regain ammo. And I'm like, so I've spent 10, 12 minutes fighting this one battle. The only thing I can do at this point, after having now completed 90% of it, is to die, replay the entire thing, and pray that there's going to be a chainsawable demon near the end and I'm going to have enough ammo to last out. That to me is, you've made a covenant with me in presenting a system and saying that I replenish ammo by killing demons, and then you allow, and I kind of think that that's a defect. I don't know that that's intentional, because it happens by chance and it doesn't happen all the time. I'm like, so you allow this state of, you allow this condition to be feasible within the game dynamic, and you have no fix for it. And that to me is an example of like the two kind of things that are unacceptable. It was also,
Yeah, I think that's my
ahead.
question there, Agasicles, is does that make it like a puzzle room where you have to figure out how you space out those unchainsawable ones, or do they spawn in at different? It's not like it's giving you all of the enemies on the board to figure out that puzzle. It's
No, because they spawn opportunistically. I'm sure that they are time spawns, but the order in which you kill them. I mean, if there's a way to plan that, I can't see how that's even remotely feasible. I mean, these are boards where it's just mass chaos, right? There's 10 different types of demons on the screen. They all have different tactics. Like I can't imagine that a human being could track like. And it's not like they're instanced, right? It's not like all 20 spawn at one time, and then you could pick, okay, I need to make sure that I leave like those 3 demons. They like, because there will be chainsawable demons that will spawn periodically as you're playing the level, but it's just this state where with certain levels you get to the end and they stop spawning. Um, then there are minor things that approach that, where there are levels where they do continue to spawn, but like the space between them is very long, so you have to run around and stay alive. They're also very difficult to see on very large levels. They will sometimes spawn and be like in a shadowy corner, so you can't see them. But yeah, I don't think it's a puzzle. I think it's a highly random set of conditions and events, what in software we might call a race condition, and it winds up in this state, which I don't think that they had planned. But it happens. It's not infrequent that it happens in the game. Another frustrating point of contention I have is you get these capabilities. I think they're the runes, where they're different buffs that you can gain essentially. 3 of them center on the use of explosive barrels, and I can't remember if they're runes or maybe these are things that are associated with your Praetor armor, so they're power ups to your Praetor armor. But there's a series of scaled skills that you get that, like the first one makes it so that you don't take that much damage if you're in proximity of a exploding barrel. The second level of it makes it so that when barrels explode, they drop ammo, and the third one is that the exploding barrels then respawn. So for a very brief period of time, when you have those 3 power sets, you have this pretty awesome skill where you can utilize barrels on the board. You don't have to worry about being close to them, so you can blow them up when a bunch of demons are near you and you're near a barrel and not worry about the splash damage that you take. The barrel then drops ammo, so you can pick up the ammo, and then the barrel respawns, so you can do the same thing over again. I don't know the exact span of time that's effective. I'll call it like an hour of gameplay out of like 20, and I took on the long end of it. It took me about 25 hours to finish it. The most I'd seen was about 22. So for a couple of hours, that power set is effective, but then you hit a point where they just stop stocking exploding barrels on the levels. Like, they just aren't there. I'm like, so here I've spent like power-ups and points and stuff investing in this power sequence, and then you totally nerf like the effectiveness of the power. So there's, largely at the end, my summary of the game is, now I will say, you get through about 80% of the game with a lot of these annoyances, combined with like some very annoying enemies. The last 20% of the game, roughly the last 2 bosses, are not as hard as some of the previous battles that you fought. There's probably too much platforming in the game overall, which I understand they put in there to try and break up some of the monotony of just like the mass chaos combat. Like my one of the analogies I've been throwing around is like one of my negatives of Man of Steel, which I actually like. I'm one of the few people who actually like Man of Steel. But one of the negatives is that that final battle gets so like violent and destructive and chaotic that you just become numb to like all the explosions and buildings falling. Like the notion that this battle is killing like thousands of people just kind of gets lost on you. That's what playing Doom Eternal is like. Like it just becomes noise and there's no nuance or elegance to it, and you just like. And I think that's what drives me to the point where like when I have to replay something in that sequence, I'm just like what like. So there were multiple times when I wanted to fail out of the loop. The last 20% of the game isn't as bad in difficulty, I think, as the first 80%. But you know, there's this ongoing dialogue of a lot of people who feel like it's their game of the year, and I'm like, I just don't. I think I mentioned on the last show, you know, I wasn't overly impressed by the art in the game, except for a couple levels. You know, that's good. I do give them thumbs up for including lots of different demons. I mean, lots of different demons with lots of different tactics, so that's more variety than the last version of the game. But you know, in general, it was a neat game to play through. I think I finished it because it was a finishable game, not because it's a game that I wanted to see the ending of. So it was a way to expend a chunk of time in a time where we can't really move around and do a lot. But
yeah, I guess that was my final question. There is like, what, given all that, you know, is that really the reason that it kept you going to the end? Is that it was you had nothing else to do, or was there enough enjoyment there that it was worth seeing through?
I felt like it was, man. A lot of it came from, I would say, critical obligation, right, to the podcast and blogging and being in the conversation about games. I felt because people were so positive on it, I needed, if I was going to come out negatively against it, I needed to see it through to the end. Um, at the end of the day, the game to me is probably like in the high 70s, and I get and I understand that like big first-person shooter fans who like that like come home, sit down, play a thing, be unfettered by a lot of complications. Like you don't have like the whole Destiny OODA loop of like inventory management and skill management and progression models and all that stuff. Um, so I get that it's a very visceral game, and people who get who are at that age where they get pumped up by like the violence and the glory kills and the fatalities essentially and all that kind of stuff. There's a lot of neat visuals there for them, um, but for me, as far as like a degree of sophistication and nuance, and like the really weird thing is they try to shoehorn this like story and lore into it that I'm just like, but there's not a full on commitment to it, so it just comes off as very kind of janky. Um, so, I mean, but no, I didn't finish it because I was like super interested in it, right? Like I feel bad because now I'm playing. We're going to talk about Call of Duty. I'm playing Call of Duty now, and I haven't finished the Modern Warfare campaign. Like that is a story that I want to finish, right? Because of its actual critical value. I had no interest in, like, from a story perspective, like finishing Doom. I finished it because I felt obligated to finish it um, because it was a thing that needed to be discussed in this year of gaming releases.
Did you play the 2016 version or game?
Yeah, I played it
Oh, you
on
did, yeah.
I played it on PlayStation 4 and I played it on Switch, and I didn't find it nearly as annoying as this one. Like,
Okay.
yeah,
Did you finish that one?
I did not finish it. No,
Okay.
yeah,
I was just wondering.
yeah, but I did not finish that one because it was annoying. If I hadn't finished this one, I would have bounced off of this one because of the degree to which it was annoying and the degree to which I felt like they just arbitrarily changed, right, rules on you for no reason, and then right and then returned you back to the original state. And there's not nearly as, I don't think there's as nearly as much platforming in that 2016 version as there is. And this one has platforming where you have to change direction in midair to grapple and attach to surfaces that there's no way you can see from the point you jump. Right, so it's deliberate. It's almost deliberately designed that the first time for some of these platforming jumps, it's impossible to make them the first time. Right, you're gonna die and you're gonna have to replay it. And I'm like, wiring a game around difficulty that's based solely on forcing people to replay things because you create an environment where there's no opportunity for them to be successful that first time. That to me is bad game design, in those areas. So I reckon that I've probably talked about everything that you guys would want to know about Doom Eternal. DBQ, can you talk to us about Resident Evil 3 Remake? Because I'm really interested to hear about that, and I'm hoping that your story is more positive than my story about Doom Eternal.
Well, so far mine is. I think is that is the man. It's been really interesting to watch the press around Resident Evil 3 Remake. In terms of some people really love it. It's gotten some nines in some places. It's gotten eights. It's gotten some really solid, strong reviews. And then there's been a lot of people who have also been really disappointed with it. Um, I'm going to be in the camp that I'm actually really enjoying it, in part because I know that it's only a 5 or 6 hour game. So uh, I, I also didn't pay $60 for it. So there's that piece there. I think the other, I did play Resident Evil 2 remake last year. Beautiful, beautiful game. This game is still beautiful. There was some out there in early review code. There were some concerns about it on Xbox One X. It's been patched. I'm running it on the X, and it looks really sweet. My only personally, I wish I was playing it on my computer with mouse and keyboard to be able to get a little more precision on the headshots. But that's my own lack of skill more than it is a game design piece. The Resident Evil 3 is and was a little more of an actiony game than the first one, or Resident than 2. Um, and it certainly still is that. There are still moments of tension. It it is still about some inventory management, as I alluded to earlier, in terms of kind of juggling around and playing the Tetris of your inventory. Not so much as it is in some of in Resident Evil 4, where you're trying to fit it all in the suitcase. But still, you have a relatively small inventory, but you have a number of places you can drop things, you can put them in storage to come back to later, because you are kind of recycling through similar areas, or cycling and switching back over the top of places you've been before. In part, if you're like me and didn't quite figure out which way to go the first time, or how to figure out that puzzle, and you kind of stumbled around killing some zombies along the way. The other nice thing about this that I appreciate more personally than Resident Evil 2 is there's just a lot more ammo out there. So it's more it is it's not so much about making every bullet. You still have to make every bullet count, because you can't just unload clips. But like the original PlayStation 1 version of this, they do take a few more hits. It takes 3 headshots to take something down. If you're missing the headshot, it's going to take a lot more body shots, and then they're still going to probably come back until you can finish off with a headshot.
Is it
Um,
is it more combat content than puzzle content? Like Resident Evil 2 to me was like super puzzle heavy.
yeah,
With
and
brief
there is
moments
more
of
puzzle.
combat.
I mean, there are puzzle moments. I found myself kind of at first. I found myself approaching it more combat heavily, and then after getting through an area and seeing like, oh, here's the electrical box I could have shot, or here's the red barrel that I missed. If I would have waited a little bit until they congregated around that area. Um, so there are moments like that, but they do give you a dodge roll, or not, kind of a dodge move, or if you're playing the male character, you get kind of a punch. Not kind of a punch, you get a punch. You get a little bit of a melee attack. It doesn't actually really do a lot of damage. It's more like a disengage or stun, to allow you a chance to kind of recover back up and take a couple shots. Um, so there is more combat in that way, and it's less about finding going back to that Doom question that I asked. It's less about finding that perfect kind of puzzle solution. That there are times when that is necessary, but at the same time, you you have some good ammo and good weapons early within the game. It's designed to give you kind of a little more sense of power in that way than it does within Resident Evil 2.
What are the key drum beats of difference for this version? Like Resident Evil 2 had some very clear points where they chose to deviate from the design of the original game, make improvements, and that's what I feel like everybody was like rah rah and like applauding about last year. What are the things in this remake that are similar to those changes?
So I'm only a couple hours in. I guess well that means out of a couple hours out of a 5 or 6 hour game is pretty significant. Um, I would say that the probably some of the reason that this game is getting a little more criticism than last year's kind of praiseworthiness around two is that the drum beats are similar enough between the two that they're you know adding a modern control scheme and some modern movement and prettying up the graphics are some of the things that did. I think in Resident Evil 2's case, those things added to the game. The fact that that came out just a year ago means that we've already seen and experienced that. One of the things that I remember about Resident Evil 3 Nemesis back on the PlayStation 1 was that ability of the Nemesis, like the big hulking, unkillable creature, to potentially show up anywhere. That it gave a sense of tension there that that when I remember playing it back in college, it would have been, there was always that trying to rush through a space because you didn't want to linger too long in case that creature would show up, that it kept you driving forward. Here, that's gone. There's not he only shows up in specific kind of cutscenes or specific narrative beats, and so there's nothing you can do to avoid it, and there's no amount of lingering that's going to make him show up sooner. So in some ways, they've stripped out some of the things that made this is the downside of it, right? As much as I say I'm enjoying the actual gameplay of it, in terms of comparing it to what it could have been, it is not up to par. That it stripped out some of those things. One of the other things I remember about the original one, I haven't gone back to know all the drum beats here, but there were times when you could choose to engage in a fight or choose not to, or you could run away or try to fight the nemesis. There were different moments where it could branch a little bit. Because I remember sitting and playing with college roommates and kind of making some of those choices. Here, there's no branching path, and the developers have come out before and said that. So it again strips down some of the game. So while it's pretty and fun to play, it's a lot less of the game than it was, 20, 30 years ago, 22 years ago, right? 1998. So there's that part. So I think that's where the downside is. Like if you're comparing it to the original or how Resident Evil 2 Remake improved on the original Resident Evil 2, that same kind of generational leap is not present here because other than the shiny coat of paint and graphics, it's there's less to the game than it was before. So yeah, I mean this is the mixed bag of it. This is where if it was a longer game, I probably wouldn't try to finish it. But the fact that it is only 5 hours, I'm interested enough. I like the characters enough. I like that aspect. To me, Resident Evil is fun when it's more actiony and more, I hate to say it, I'm sorry, but I enjoyed the light gun like Resident Evil games on Wii and PlayStation 3. I like the world. I don't necessarily care for the tension, and that's a personal preference, right? Like if that's why you loved Resident Evil 7 or 2, you're going to miss some of that here.
Yeah.
Is there's less tension.
What's always interesting to me with this franchise, and it's becoming more so as we go through these remakes, is how we talk about them as a franchise, and we talk about them all being this part of this production train, but in a lot of cases they are radically different games that yield radically different, in particular, emotional effects as you're going through the game. You know, you mentioned Resident Evil 7, which for me, and I love Raccoon City Resident Evil, is kind of where my heart of is in the franchise, and when they're not in Raccoon City, I'm less interested. But Resident Evil 7 is probably my favorite Resident Evil game to date, and it's the one that has the least to do with what you think of as kind of the core lore of the franchise.
Yeah, I would agree with you. I think it's Resident Evil 7 is an amazing horror game, right? I mean,
Yeah.
it is a suspense thriller horror game. Um, it has freaked me out in VR plenty of times. I think it's a strong game because of that design. Um, but yeah, I think right. I mean, I'm also somebody who rented the Resident Evil 2 DVD collection stuff from the late 2000s when they went back and kind of animated and made new stories. So I agree with you. I like the Raccoon City kind of lore aspect of it. Um, and that is probably one of the reasons why people would engage with this game. I still think, at 5 or 6 hours, it is hard pressed to say that this is a full price game. At the same time as there's other things out there that can compete for your money for, a lot more time. And again, it's hard to put a value on that, and I don't want to go down that like it needs to be X amount per hour type of thing. Um, it's a game that I'm glad I got through GameFly. It's a game that I will look similar to like what I did for Resident Evil 2 is I waited to the fall for a sale, picked it up, later on. I think it is something where it would be it's a fine game to release right now. The it is something that probably I could see is going to hit a sale price faster than Doom will in terms of a new release.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. There's a ton more questions and aspects of this to talk around. I think, in particular, given how it winds up playing out in the market when it's released in such close proximity to Final Fantasy VII Remake. But let's go on and talk about Call of Duty Modern Warfare, which Season 3 dropped yesterday. Um, Amazingly enough, in a very weird quirk of events, even though I think I'd say maybe only one of us is really like a dedicated first-person shooter PvP competitive type gamer. We have all actually spent time with this title. And again, it's just a weird convergence of things that we're all dipping into. So, Prime, do you want to start us off with this discussion of what you've experienced and found and I'd actually ask that we talk about the WarZone piece first. Um, both pre-season 3 and season 3. Um,
Yeah.
or Prime, have you not jumped into WarZone? Or I'm
I,
realizing now, weirdly, I guess I just forced myself to see Call of Duty Modern Warfare by your name in
just
the
assumed.
agenda, but I see now that it's
No,
actually
but
not.
you've played it before because you talked about it 2 weeks ago. You were talking
Yeah,
about Warzone 2 weeks ago.
I did. I have played it. Yeah, but yeah, I haven't played the regular multiplayer or the single player stuff. I actually didn't even buy the game at all. But the Warzone part is free, so I jumped into it. I was like, yeah, I'll try it out. But yeah, I mean, obviously the Warzone. If you don't know what it is, it's the battle royal side of Call of Duty for, and this is Infinity Ward this time. It's not Treyarch doing it like in Black Ops 4. But no, like I said, does play a lot different than Black Ops 4's Warzone. Battle Royale game. More, I don't want to say boots to the ground, but kind of more boots to the ground, kind of realistic-ish, for a game. Call of Duty. I haven't played the new season yet, unfortunately. I haven't got a chance to get into it. But what I've played and kind of been playing, I haven't actually played it probably within the last week and a half or so. I'm still enjoying it. Like I said, like I mentioned last time, it's for me the biggest thing in this game is just the sound. And I think I might have mentioned this the last time. I for some reason I just never realized, kind of paid attention to sound in games and stuff like that. And I'm not one to like play music or anything like that. I know a lot of people like to do that when they're playing games, but I can't. I have to, I have to listen to the game sound and all that. But because like I said, it's just like sounds like thrown at you at all corners, and just all the time you're hearing something chatter, guns, or just helicopters, or planes flying by and stuff like that. So just sound is a big thing for me in here, but it does play very well too. Now, Agasicles, I can't remember because we chatted a little bit about this. Did you start season 3 yet?
Yeah, I did, and and we could burn through this section. I didn't want to. I didn't want to make you talk about Call of Duty Modern Warfare
Oh no,
when you didn't actually put it on the agenda for yourself.
no, that's fine. Yeah, because I mean, most of my other stuff is actually pretty minimal because I've just been playing Animal Crossing. So. We can talk. We can talk Call of Duty. That's fine. I have no problems with that.
Yeah, I did jump into season 3 yesterday. I haven't. I'm not the expert on Call of Duty to be able to pull apart all the nuanced differences between the season. The things I picked up on is and I haven't played this yet, but it's kind of the weird thing is WarZone, which launched with trios in the same way that Apex Legends did, has actually, I think, pulled trios and now it's quads. So they didn't just introduce quads, but they actually, as far as I believe I understand, they pulled trios and now
Yeah.
core WarZone is quads, which to me is a weird choice to make.
Yeah.
But I don't actually really care that much about like the team play Warzone because I just play solos because that's logistically easiest for me to do. I don't have to worry about like syncing up with people on the same time
Yeah.
zone or whatever.
Reviving people.
Yeah, right. My big things about Warzone, and I've actually kind of walked back a little bit of my interest level in Warzone. I actually hadn't played any of Call of Duty Modern Warfare multiplayer. Um, but Warzone piqued my interest just as another battle royale game. And again, I'm not a battle royale expert, but there are elements of them I'm finding interesting. But like a big thing is from the time that I spent with Warzone, I feel like the map is too big. It's too many players. Like it's 150 people. I was in a match the other night that lasted 21 minutes, and I did very little. Like I ran around and looted. I wound up in the gulag. I won my gulag match. I went back. I was in endgame. Endgame here is like 25 people. Like when you're in endgame of Fortnite, it's like 5 people. Like endgame here when the storm collapses is like 25, and the extreme verticality on the map just contributes to that toxic camping and sniping, and so endgame to me gets very disinteresting, right? I haven't seen like a ton of combat. It really kind of just collapses to who's camped out on a roof. I think it would be really interesting if what they did in Endgame was they just brought some like NPC aircraft through and just like leveled the whole space, right? And just removed all the verticality for the last 5 minutes of the game. But it's neat in that it's survivable even for new gamer players to it. The other thing that bugs me is, and I know Fortnite players complain a lot about the shielding and how it like people are overly buffed and like it equalizes a lot of the playing field between unskilled versus skilled players. Um, like, and I've never felt like, since I'm an unskilled player, I never wanted to complain about overbuffing from shields. But great Scott, man, I like pegged a guy with like 4 sniper shots from a tower, and like he was still going. And I'm like, and I could see like as it hit him, it was like 1 shield, 2 shield, 3 shield, and then the 4th hit him, and then he just like ran away. And I'm like, wow, like 4 sniper shots hitting a guy, like I feel like, and so what it does is you feel proud of yourself for pegging those 4 sniper rounds, right? He was way out there and he was moving, but like that was all deflated by the fact that like he just scampered away. I never found him again, So I've actually fallen back to playing a lot of free for all now because again the matches are really quick. They're smaller scale. The maps are a lot tighter. There's not these long periods of inactivity. The other thing that bugs me about Warzone is there's so much loot on the map that like everybody like when you play Fortnite, you're lucky if you're amazingly lucky if you wind up with a gold. You're doing solid if you get a purple. But like in Warzone, it's rare that you don't end up with a purple or gold or one of your custom loadouts. So like everybody super buffs, and in Fortnite it drives. I think I've talked to you before, Prime, about it drives a tactic for me where I'm really sweaty at the outset of a match in Fortnite because I feel like the in the first few minutes of the match the playing field is relatively even right before everybody gets high powered weapons. So it's like if I hear you in the early rounds of Fortnite, I'm coming for you because I'm going to try and take you out before you can get a higher level weapon where like your skill will allow you to take me out in 2 or 3 shots. But in Warzone, like that there's not that nuanced dynamic of tactics. I think because of just like how kind of cranked up to 11 everything is.
Well, I think the other thing about that too, and you kind of mentioned it, is the map's so big, you're not going to see anybody, so you could just loot. There's a building there. You can almost go into every room, so and there's probably going to be something in there, and you can just you'll eventually find some kind of power weapon at least. So I do like how the you don't have to mess with like the attachments and stuff in this game like you did in Black Ops 4. So that's kind of nice. It does simplify it. It's just color coded, just like Fortnite as far as the weapons. So that's kind of nice. But yeah, I think that's the problem is the large map. So
Yeah, you don't have to mess around with your weapons in game. You can mess around with them in the inner match screen. As you build your custom loadouts. But
yeah,
there are a lot of neat aspects. Like I like the shopping cart caches and you being able to buy buffs and stuff on the map.
yeah.
I
Buy your
like
player back. You can
yeah,
revive them again.
yeah,
That's kind of
yeah,
nice.
yeah. And I like the different modes they have. I haven't had a chance to get into plunder, but that's a neat mode. It's weird to me.
Plunder is fun.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
I've played some Plunder.
okay.
So
Can you explain? So not disappointment, but the surprising thing to me is I haven't had a chance to play it because I would need friends and people to team up with, but I hear people actually think it's like disinteresting and like which is just weird to me. Like hearing the description of it, I thought, oh, this is a really neat like new take on like battle royale. So
I think I've had some experience where because Plunder needs to go up to 1 million before the game is over. It can take a long time. I've had 20-minute matches. I've had 30-minute matches. I've heard people online that have had 45-minute matches. Um, they've just added a kind of new mode within Plunder, or kind of to complement Plunder, called Blood Money, which still gives you money if it gives you money no matter what the person that you kill has had. Like in Plunder, if I get killed, somebody can loot my body and get some of the money that I had collected. If you kill somebody that hasn't collected money, you wouldn't get anything. So there was kind of a disincentive, and it incentivized kind of hunting down, almost in a dark zone like aspect of hunting down people that had the most money. There were a couple times when I got marked on the map for having one of the highest loot packages with me, right? So then I'd show up on the map and would be this is where the large map aspect comes into play. Is it was easier to run and hide and kind of keep moving and separate yourself because the map is so large, and in some ways that ends up going it has the potential of delaying the game as well, because it allows the geography to kind of dictate the pace of the map. But in terms of the gameplay, it's a fun mode that way. I've only played solo. I could see very much like it could make a whole lot more sense if you're coordinated, like most things. But it's one of those, and the reason I like it and it attracted me more than with the Warzone is kind of there's almost a Battlefield-esque kind of objective play here, right? Like I don't have to be a great shot, but I can move quickly. I can disengage from a firefight. I can loot like crazy and still be an asset to my team. So I don't have to get a lot of kills, but I can play the objective and still help with that. So it ends up kind of combining a battle royale and the dark zone from the Division.
Have you, DB? Have you played just the normal battle royale mode?
Only like one match just to kind of test it out, play the gulag a little bit, see what that's like.
So during Plunder, so it's the same map then? It's not like shrunken down or anything like that? You still have like the gas coming in, or is that not really?
No, the gas. There wasn't a so it's still the same giant map.
Okay.
So that again, going back to where the mode can really drag on, is that if it's not closing the ring on you, you still have access to a huge space of geography.
Yeah. Okay. So that's interesting.
And then maybe that's something they add in, right? That's a relatively thing to change the way the mode plays, is to start closing the circle.
Yeah.
So DBQ, let's go ahead and keep you on the mic, and why don't you wrap up our gameplay segment with a rapid fire description of any of your remaining titles you wanted to go over?
Sure. Last couple of weeks, since there is no baseball or actually any other sport, I have played some RBI baseball. RBI baseball on the Switch and also on iOS. On iOS, it's like $7 or $6, and I think that's probably the right price for it. It is pretty arcadey. On the Switch, it's like $30. And they play the exact same. In fact, it plays a little better on iOS because it's not super complicated in the controls, so having a little bit of touchscreen or virtual sticks isn't a real detriment. The pitching has changed. This is the best iteration from what I've seen. It's got a more over-the-shoulder pitcher, bases loaded, or MLB The Show, and it's got some neat mechanics. Again, it's very arcadey. It works well as kind of a pick up and play. I don't think it's $30 worth of gameplay though.
More interesting, RBI Baseball 20 or MLB The Show 20?
At first, I actually would say RBI because I haven't played it before, right? Because it was new. MLB The Show is over the long term a whole lot more interesting. RBI Baseball was more interesting for the first day because it felt new, it felt different. But by the end of the first day, it was the exact same stuff. Where in MLB The Show, I've got so many other things I can do. If I don't want to engage in one type of gameplay, I can do another.
Okay, so for you MLB The Show players, given some of the jankiness of 20, even though it's been patched, might just be a good year to take an iteration off. Play some RBI baseball, come back to MLB The Show next year. Osiris Prime, your last rapid fire piece from the gameplay section for anything else that you want to talk about?
I'm going to go with a mobile game this time, and I don't usually do that, but it's Retro Bowl with actually DBQ had mentioned. Well, actually, it's probably been quite a while now since I've been on the show, but he mentioned a little while ago. And so I think it's both on iOS and Android, I believe, right?
Yep, iOS and Android, and on Congregate Online as well.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm playing on Android right now. It's like Tecmo Bowl-ish type of game, so you don't need anything super fancy. But I've been pretty much playing it every day. Super simple, side scrolling. I shouldn't say side scrolling, but side to side action. And yeah, I'm having a lot of fun. You kind of get, I guess, kind of detailed into it, with the trading and stuff. If you kind of go into that, but I'll do that every once in a while. Mostly I just play games just to get into the Super Bowl, and I think it's like 5 or 6 minutes for a game, so it's pretty quick. I can usually do maybe 2 Super Bowls in a week if I sit down and play it for quite a while. Probably more actually. If I could probably do one every day, really, if you just sat down and played it all day, because it doesn't take that long. But yeah, I've been really enjoying it. I haven't been really doing any sports on any consoles really, so this was kind of nice, just sit down and play for a few minutes, and kind of just kind of veg out. So very cool. Retro Bowl, check it out.
Nice. So that's going to do it for our gameplay section. For the next PickZ PlayZ assignment, we're all on self-isolation, but you guys probably all each have friends. Maybe me, not so much. But hey, reach out to one of them, your fellow co-hosts on E2KG, on the E2KG network, Count, and ask them to play a game. So we're all playing Call of Duty Modern Warfare? Yeah, to a certain extent. So that may be a possibility. Already preliminarily, DBQ is saying that he's going to play NBA 2K20. I'm very curious to find out who his friends are who play that title and on what system they're playing it on. I'll be playing Call of Duty. I wrote down WarZone. It may be WarZone. It may not. It all depends. But a lot of people are out there playing those games. I'm actually might be interested in getting back to some... I did play some Team Deathmatch with fellow Twitch streamer Nostradamus TV. Like at the outset of my Call of Duty multiplayer time, so I didn't know any of the maps. I know some of the maps now, so I'm really interested to go back and play maybe some TDM and being a little more knowledgeable about the geography. Next week's show is a deep dive episode. DBQ will be sitting in the captain's chair. Actually, it brings Swiss and I back together again. That's weird. I got to check that rotation. Because I guess we've been on the 2 weeks prior to this show, and then we're back on it next week. So
Kicking Osiris off again. Yep.
Yeah, I didn't have, like I said, I wasn't on there for like 3 weeks straight. When DB was like, "Hey, you want to be on next week?" I was like, "Sure, yeah." I've been on for a while, but then I was on there for like the next 2 weeks after that. Next week, so I don't know what happened there.
We've had some weirdness in the rotation too. Well, the rotation's not straight, but also DBQ hopped on an episode that he would have normally been off. So
that's true.
So there's always shenanigans and wonkiness going on. But next week,
maybe I'll make an appearance next week. Who knows?
By all means, you're always invited.
Can't stop me.
Seats always open. So next week, we bring back DBQ, myself, and Swiss for another deep dive episode. It'll be very interesting to talk about things that have been going on in the news cycle. So please feel free to swing by and join us then. We should be, barring any technical difficulties, live again right back here Thursday night at roughly 8:30 p.m. Eastern. So until next time, take care of yourself, stay safe out there, play the games that you like, and stream the games that you love. On behalf of the E2KG Network, my name has been Agasicles. My co-hosts have been DBqHams and Osiris Prime. We will see you right back here next week. Until then, good night, good luck, good gaming. We're out of here.